Welcome back to The Deep Dive. Today, we're really tackling something huge. We are diving into a history that, well, it starts before time itself, you could say.
Yeah, absolutely. We're looking at the whole sweep, the foundational myths and the chronological history of Tamriel, the heartland of Nirn.
And the source material, it's just vast, isn't it? We're talking creation stories, divine arguments, actual military reports.
And let's be honest, a fair bit of propaganda mixed in there too. We're going right back basically to the beginning, the Dawn era, this sort of cosmic soup stage.
And then trekking all the way forward through four more linear eras, right up to where things stand now, the fourth era.
Exactly. That's a massive journey.
And our goal today, it isn't just to list off dates, it's more about navigating this really complex, sometimes contradictory set of stories.
Trying to pull out the big shifts. Yeah, the political stuff, the metaphysical ideas, the cultural clashes that really define this world.
Right. And understanding the deep philosophical conflicts that, they seem to fuel everything. Millennia of war.
And that really starts with understanding something quite fundamental about how history works in Tamriel. You have to accept a pretty unusual premise right off the bat.
Which is?
You just can't treat Tamrielic history like a single, straight, factual account. It's not like reading a modern textbook.
Yeah.
It's more like a tapestry. It's woven from myth, definitely from war, divine meddling, and this is the crucial part, sources that are almost always biased.
Biased how? Like politically biased?
Politically, religiously, you're dealing with dogma, centuries of imperial spin, deep-seated racial prejudices, and sometimes just, simple mistakes in copying things down over the years.
So we can't just take everything we read at face value then?
Not at all. It means really significant events like, say, an entire race just vanishing off the face of Nirn or the death of a major hero. These things often have multiple, completely conflicting stories about how they happened. The people writing this history, they're not detached observers. They're often priests, they're zealots, they're agents working for whoever's in power at the time.
So that ambiguity, it's baked in.
It's fundamental. It's a core feature of how they even think about history. In Tamriel, history itself is seen as, well, mutable. It can be changed by powerful enough forces.
That is genuinely fascinating. So history isn't just what happened, it's what people believe happened.
Or even, as we'll see, what the gods decided happened, sometimes looking back and changing the past itself, retroactively.
Wow. Okay. Before we plunge into the deep end then, maybe we should quickly lay out the structure. The timeline isn't exactly straightforward, is it?
Not at all. Good point. So historians divide it into 6 main periods. First, you've got the Dawn era, and that's, well, it's not really linear time at all.
Mythic time, you called it.
Exactly. It's when events happened, sort of, all at once, or outside of sequence. You get contradictory outcomes sometimes because time hadn't really set yet. You can't put a date on it.
Pure metaphysical chaos. Sounds about right.
Pretty much. Then things stabilize a bit, and we get the Merethic era, the era of elves. This is where linear time starts, but it does something weird.
It counts backward.
Yeah, it counts down from ME 2500, that's Merethic era 2500, down to ME 1. It's thought to reflect the elven worldview, that creation was a mistake and maybe time should run backward towards divinity again.
Okay, that's different. And then
finally, when a human dynasty, the Camerons, really gets established, we switch to a standard forward-counting timeline. That's the first era. It starts at 1E0 and runs for nearly 3,000 years, up to 1E 2920.
almost 3,000 years, wow.
A long time.
Yeah.
Then comes the second era, which is mostly this long period without a proper emperor, the interregnum.
Yeah.
That's 896 years.
Okay.
Followed by the third era, the age of the Septim Emperors, which was comparatively brief, only 433 years.
The one that ends with the Oblivion Crisis.
That's the one, the big catastrophe that closes out. And then that leads us into the fourth era, which is where things are currently. So Alduin's return in Skyrim, that's well into the fourth era.
Got it. That definitely helps frame things.
Right, let's do it. Back to the very beginning, part 1, the mythic ages and foundational schisms. Okay, so before anything else, there's just the void. And from this primordial nothingness emerge 2 fundamental opposing forces. You have Anu, who represents stasis, order, potential.
And Padme?
Padme is the opposite, change, chaos, limitation. Their interaction, this constant push and pull, is what creates the Orbis, the sort of totality of existence. And from the Orbis, the first spirits emerge, the Atata, the original spirits.
And the key player here, the one who really kicks off the main story, is Lorkhan, often called the trickster, the creator figure.
Lorkhan is the one who comes up with the idea for Mundus, the mortal plane, our world, essentially, and he pitches it to the other Aedra.
Pitches it or tricks them into it. I've heard both.
Exactly. That's part of the ambiguity right there. He convinced, or maybe duped, a lot of the other spirits into contributing their own divine power, their essence, to actually build this new reality.
And those spirits, the ones who invested themselves, they became the Aedra.
Yes, the Aedra, meaning ancestors. But here's the catch. By binding themselves to the rules of this new mortal plane, things like linear time, gravity, mortality itself, they became diminished, trapped, in a way. Their divine power lessened, their forms constrained.
Which explains the difference between them and the other divine beings.
Precisely. Some spirits, like Magnus, who's often called the architect, realized what a massive drain of power this creation demanded. They basically bailed before they were fully committed.
Magnus and the Magna G.
Right. They literally tore holes in the fabric of Mundus as they fled back to Aetherius, the realm of pure magic. And those holes, that's the sun, the stars. That's how magic flows into the mortal world.
Okay, wow. So Aedra are the invested ones, diminished. Magna G are the ones who fled mid-project. What about the Daedra?
The Daedra are the third group. They basically refused to participate from the get-go. They saw the whole project as beneath them, this idea of limitation and mortality.
So they didn't give up any power.
Exactly. They retained their full immortal strength. They exist outside the mortal plane, in oblivion, but they can still interact with it, often more directly than the Aedra can, because they aren't bound by its rules in the same way.
Right. So Mundus is created, but it's chaotic, unstable. And the Aedra are realizing they've maybe made a mistake or been led into one.
They're definitely realizing they're diminished, trapped in this painful mortal-ish existence. So they gather at the Adamantine Tower, supposedly the oldest structure in Tamriel, maybe the pinpoint where reality first coalesced. This meeting is called the Convention.
And this is where they judge Lorkhan.
It is. They hold him responsible for tricking them into this state, and the outcome is violent. They tear out Lorkhan's divine heart, this incredibly powerful artifact, the metaphysical engine of creation.
And they throw it across Tamriel, and it lands.
Where it eventually forms the volcano, Red Mountain, in Morrowind. But crucially, this act, this final, decisive cosmic violence, it does something fundamental. It stabilizes reality. It imposes linear time.
So that's the moment the Dawn Era ends.
That's the moment. The chaos ends, linear time begins, and we mark the start of the Merethic Era, ME 2500.
And this single event, the creation and the judgment of Lorkhan, this is the bedrock of everything that follows, the foundational schism.
Absolutely. It dictates millennia of conflict, especially between the races of men and the races of Mer, the elves. How you view the convention basically defines your entire cultural and, frankly, racial destiny in this world.
Okay, break that down. How do the elves see it?
The Mer, the elven races, they generally trace their ancestry back to the Aedra, who were trapped. So to them, Lorkhan is the doom drum, this malevolent trickster who imprisoned their divine ancestors' immortality.
So their goal is often to undo that, to get back to being divine.
Often, yes. There's a strong undercurrent in many elven cultures aiming for a return to that immortal state, a shedding of what they see as the prison of Mundus. Mortality is a cage to them.
But for men?
Completely different perspective. The races of Men-Nords, Imperials, Redguards, they tend to venerate Lorkhan. They call him Shor, or Shizar. He's seen as a heroic creator figure who championed their existence.
They see his sacrifice as a good thing.
As the heroic act that gave them the gift of life, agency, the chance to strive and achieve things within the mortal plane. For them, mortality isn't a prison, it's an opportunity. A gift.
So the fundamental disagreement running through all of Tamrielic history isn't just about land or power.
It's much deeper. It's an absolute metaphysical clash over the nature of existence itself. Is life a trap or a gift? Almost every war, every major conflict we're going to discuss, you can trace its roots right back to that question.
Wow. Okay, so that philosophical bomb drops, time starts ticking backwards, and we're in the Merethic Era, the Age of Elves, lasting about 2,500 years.
Right. And this period is defined mostly by the migration and settlement of the Aldmer. They're the progenitors of all the modern elven races, supposedly coming from a lost mythical homeland called Aldmeris.
And they were advanced, right? Way ahead of the curve compared to others at the time.
Oh, absolutely. Highly sophisticated, literate. They established these massive structures that weren't just buildings, they were metaphysical anchors. Things like the Crystal Tower in Somerset, and crucially for later history, the White Gold Tower in Cyrodiil.
Using them to stabilize reality or shape it?
Both. arguably. They were literally imposing their order onto the landscape, often subjugating or pushing out the native beast peoples, the ancestors of the Khajiit and Argonians, into the fringes.
And these Aldmer settlers, they didn't stay homogenous, did they? They diverged.
Dramatically. Depending on where they settled and what philosophies they adopted, you get the Altmer, the High Elves sticking to tradition in Somerset, the Bosmer, Wood Elves adapting to the forests of Valenwood, the Aelides, the Wild Elves building their slave empire in Cyrodiil.
The Chimer went east.
Led by the prophet Veloth, yes, seeking a different path, ending up in what becomes Morrowind. The Dwemer, the Deep Elves, delved underground, focusing on logic, science, and this unique tonal architecture.
And the Falmer?
The Snow Elves. They settled the frozen north, Skyrim. So for a long time, elven civilization was absolutely dominant, sophisticated, powerful, ancient.
But that dominance gets challenged pretty brutally.
Almost immediately, yeah. You had this clash of colonizations, as some scholars call it. From the north, from the continent of Atmora, which was apparently getting too cold, came the men, the Proto-Nords.
Led by Isgramor.
Exactly. They land in Skyrim and establish their first major settlement, Sarthal. At first, there's maybe some uneasy coexistence, some trade with the Falmer already there.
Hope that doesn't last.
No. The Falmer, the Snow Elves, they seem to have panicked. Maybe they feared the sheer rate at which the humans were multiplying. Maybe they saw their own doom approaching. They launched a surprise attack.
The Night of Tears.
The Night of Tears. They tried to wipe out the human settlement completely. Brutal.
But Isgramor escapes.
He and his sons are among the few survivors. They flee back to Atmora, but only briefly. He returns, famously, with his 500 companions. And this time, it's not about coexistence. It's a war of extermination against the elves in Skyrim.
And Isgramor also becomes a historian.
In a way, yes. That's a fascinating detail. He apparently saw the value in the elves' written records, so he adapted their concepts to create a runic script for the Nordic language. He's arguably the first human historian in Tamriel, documenting their deeds and lineage.
Meanwhile, these Proto-Nords have another problem, don't they? Dragons.
Oh yes, a big problem. They initially had this sort of animal totem worship, which somehow evolved or was twisted into a full-blown tyrannical theocracy run by dragons.
Led by Alduin, the World Eater.
Alduin, yeah, ruling through his powerful dragon priests. It was total oppression.
Which leads to the Dragon War. How does that even happen? Mortals fighting dragons.
It seemed impossible. Until, according to the legends, a few dragons actually defected. The most famous is Parthenax. They felt Alduin was going too far, claiming divine status beyond even what dragons were meant to have.
And they taught the Nords, the Thu'um, the voice.
Exactly. The ability to harness their own life force, their shout, into a physical force. Magic, basically, but uniquely Nordic. This power allowed them to actually fight back against the dragons.
And they eventually defeat Alduin, or postpone him.
Postpone him, really. 3 legendary Nord heroes, Hakon One-Eye, Gormlaith Golden Hilt, and Feldir the Old, used the Thu'um, but they also needed something more. They used an Elder Scroll.
Ah, the scrolls. Always involved in the big moments.
Always. They used its power to essentially cast Alduin adrift in time. Not destroy him, but throw him forward into the future, shattering the dragon cult's rule for that era.
But back to the poor Falmer. After the Nords win their war against them, what happens? It's not good, is it?
It's possibly one of the darkest stories in Tamrielic history. Utterly heartbreaking. Defeated by Ysgramor's campaign, hunted, scattered, they were desperate. They turned to their cousins, the Dwemer, underground.
Seeking sanctuary.
Exactly. And the Dwemer. Well, the Dwemer agreed, but the price was horrific. It was betrayal on a massive scale.
What did they do?
They forced the Falmer refugees to consume a specific type of toxic fungus native to Blackreach, the huge cavern system under Skyrim.
And this fungus, it blinded them.
Permanently. And it seems to have been hereditary. Then, once blinded and dependent, the Dwemer enslaved the entire Falmer race.
My God.
And over centuries, living in darkness, forced to continually consume this toxic fungus, perhaps as part of their slave diet, they devolved. Physically, mentally. They lost their history, their culture, their minds. They became the twisted, violent, subterranean creatures that people in later eras know simply as the Falmer.
From a proud race of snow elves to that.
It's a complete tragedy. And a chilling insight into the Dwemer mindset, maybe. Logic over empathy, perhaps. We don't fully know.
A brutal start to recorded history, indeed. Okay, let's move forward. Part 2, the First Era. This runs from 1E0 to 1E2920, the ascendancy of man.
Right. And while technically the era starts with the founding of the Cameron dynasty by the Bosmer in Velenwood, establishing that first formal date.
The real action shifts to the center, doesn't it? To Cyrodiil.
Absolutely, the heartland.
Huh.
And the story there is the rise of the first empire of man, starting with the Alessian Rebellion,
Against the Aelites, the Wild Elves.
who had built this magnificent civilization centered on the White Gold Tower. But, and this is crucial, their entire society, their splendor, was built on the backs of enslaved humans, the Nedic peoples. And it wasn't just labor. It was often brutal, torturous slavery. Flesh sculpting, arcane experiments, really horrific stuff is described.
So ripe for rebellion.
Definitely. And in 1E242, it ignites. Led by a Nedic slave woman named Alessia, she becomes this figurehead, this visionary.
And she has help. Some pretty legendary help.
Oh yeah, Morehouse, this winged bullman demigod, and Pellinal Whitestrake.
Pellinal. The Star-Made Knight. Basically a walking, talking, elf-hating weapon of mass destruction sent by the gods.
That's pretty much how the stories portray him. A terrifying, unstoppable force fueled by righteous or perhaps insane fury against the Aelites. He's credited with impossible feats of arms.
And they have Nord allies, too.
Yes, the Nords from Skyrim, eager to push back against any elven power, join the rebellion. Becomes this massive human uprising sweeping across Cyrodiil.
Ending at the White Gold Tower.
In 1E243, the siege of the imperial city. Pellinal Whitestrake, according to legend, storms the tower pretty much single-handedly, kills the Aelide sorcerer king Umaril the Unfeathered.
It dies in the process.
Yes, he's finally cut down by Umaril's other kings just after his victory. Alessia takes the city. The first empire of man is born.
And then comes the deal with the gods, the covenant, right?
Alessia, now Empress Alessia, makes a pact. Akatosh, the dragon god of time himself, gifts her the Amulet of Kings.
A Chimel Adabal.
That's its Aelide name, yes. And Akatosh decrees, as long as one of Alessia's heirs, someone with the dragon blood, wears this amulet and keeps the dragon fires burning in the Temple of the One in the imperial city.
The barriers hold between Nirn and Oblivion.
Exactly. The realms of the Daedra princes remain sealed off. It's the first great magical protection for the mortal plane against that kind of invasion, a cornerstone of imperial stability for thousands of years.
And Alessia, she wasn't just a rebel leader, she was politically smart too, wasn't she? Dealing with all these different human groups and leftover elves.
Incredibly savvy. She had Nords who worship their own gods, Nedic peoples with their own traditions, probably some surviving Aelides who surrendered. How do you unite them?
You create a new religion.
Essentially, yes. She synthesized the Nordic pantheon, Shor, Kine, etc., with the Aldmeri pantheon, the Aedra, like Akatosh, Mara, Debella. She created the 8 divines, a religion that almost everyone could find something familiar in. It was a masterstroke of political and cultural unification.
Binding the empire together through shared belief. Okay, so man is ascendant in the Heartland, but elsewhere, things are getting weird. Morrowind.
Yeah, over in the northeast, in Resdain, which we now call Morrowind, a very different kind of conflict is brewing, the War of the First Council.
This is between the Chimer and the Dwemer. Weren't they allies?
They were. They'd previously teamed up to kick the Nords out of the region, but that alliance falls apart, probably around 1E668 or so, and the reason is the Heart of Lorkhan.
The actual heart ripped out at the convention. The Dwemer found it.
Deep beneath Red Mountain. The Dwemer tonal architect, a genius named Kagrenac, discovered it.
Yeah.
And he saw potential. Immense divine power just sitting there.
And he wanted to use it.
Oh, absolutely. He wasn't content just studying it. He devised a set of special tools, Sunder, Keening, and Wraithguard, specifically to tap into and manipulate the heart's power.
For what purpose? What was the goal?
The ultimate goal, according to most sources, was the creation of a new god, a mechanical god, the Numidium, often called the brass god.
Why build a god?
Kagrenac believed he could use the Numidium, powered by the heart, to grant his entire race, the Dwemer, collective immortality. Transcendence, to basically bypass the rules of Mundus and the limitations imposed by the Aedra altogether.
Okay, that sounds ambitious. And probably blasphemous to the Chimer.
Utterly blasphemous. The Chimer, led by their hero Indoril Nerevar, saw Lorkhan as fundamentally evil, tampering with his heart, trying to steal godhood. That was the ultimate sin, a threat to reality itself.
So war was inevitable.
Leading directly to the Battle of Red Mountain, around 1E700. And this is where we hit maybe the single biggest mystery in all of Tamriel's recorded history.
Yeah, vanishing.
The Vanishing Act. Right in the middle of the battle, maybe at the exact moment Kagrenac struck the heart with his tools. Every single Dwemer, everywhere, across the entire continent.
Gone.
Instantly.
Vanished.
The sources are unanimous on this. No bodies, no signs of a struggle, no magical residue, just empty cities, silent workshops, piles of armor with no one inside. Gone.
How is that even
Undoubted.
possible? What are the theories? It sounds insane.
The theories have to be pretty wild to match the event. One idea is catastrophic failure. Kagrenac messed up, and the power he unleashed didn't elevate his people, it just erased them, uncreated them from the timeline.
Woo! Okay, what else?
Maybe it worked. Maybe they achieved apotheosis. They became the skin or the consciousness of the Numidium itself, ascending to some state beyond mortal understanding.
So they're not dead, they're just somewhere else.
Or something else?
Possibly. Or maybe they were transported wholesale to another dimension, another reality, maybe waiting to return. The truth is, nobody knows.
Is there anyone left? Any Dwemer at all?
There's one famous example, Yagrim Bagarn. He survived because, supposedly, he was traveling in an outer realm, maybe a pocket dimension of oblivion, when the event happened. He came back to find his entire race gone. He himself was afflicted with corpus disease later, which horribly deformed him, but also granted him a naturally long life.
His survival almost proves it was some kind of simultaneous targeted event, doesn't it? Not just a localized disaster. It strongly suggests something metaphysical and instantaneous happened to the entire race, yes.
Okay, so the Dwemer vanish? What about the Chimer?
Nuravar.
Nuravar, the Chimer hero, dies shortly after the battle, under very suspicious and highly disputed circumstances. We'll definitely come back to that. But his death and the subsequent actions of his closest advisors regarding the Heart and Kagrenac's tools, this angers the Daedric prince Azura.
Azura, who was the patron deity of the Chimer.
Exactly. She felt betrayed, and she lays a curse on the entire Chimer race for their perceived sacrilege and betrayal of Nuravar.
Transforming them
Into the Dunmer, the Dark Elves. Their skin turned ash gray, their eyes fiery red, a permanent physical mark of Azura's displeasure.
and Nuravar's advisors, the ones Azura was angry with.
Almalexia, Sothasil, and Vivek, Nuravar's wife and his two closest counselors. They managed to seize Kagrenac's tools and figured out how to use them safely, or at least more safely than Kagrenac did.
They tapped into the heart's power. They did. They achieved godhood, becoming the immortal tribunal, the living gods who would rule Morrowind as god kings for the next 3,000 years, completely independent from the rising human empires.
3,000 years. Wow. Okay, you mentioned Nuravar's death was disputed. This sounds like prime, unreliable narrator territory.
Absolutely textbook example. The Battle of Red Mountain and its immediate aftermath might be the most contested event in history. We basically have three main conflicting narratives.
Let's hear them. What's the first one?
Okay, first you have the Ashlander version. The Ashlanders are the nomadic Dunmer tribes who rejected the tribunal's rule and tried to keep the older traditions alive.
What did they say happened?
They claim the tribunal Almalexia, Sothasil, and Vivek were tempted by the power of the heart. They say they murdered Nuravar after the battle, specifically to steal Kagrenac's tools and seize godhood for themselves.
So a coup, a divine coup. And what about Dagoth-Ur in their version? He's usually the villain.
In the Ashlander account, Dagoth-Ur was Nuravar's loyal friend, left to guard the tools while Nuravar consulted the tribunal. They claim the tribunal are the traitors, and Dagoth-Ur only became corrupted by the heart's influence much later when he tried to guard it against the tribunal. For them, the tribunal's rise was based on murder and betrayal.
Okay, that's pretty damning. What's the official story? The Tribunal Temple account.
The temple, which ruled Morrowind for millennia, obviously paints a very different picture. They say Nuravar was mortally wounded, but by Dagoth-Ur.
Who they say was the traitor.
Right. They claim Dagoth-Ur was corrupted early, maybe even sided with the Dwemer secretly, and tried to seize the heart's power for himself. Nuravar fought him, was fatally wounded, and then with his dying breath, he entrusted the tribunal, his loyal counselors, with the burden of using the tools to become gods in order to protect Morrowind from the madness of Dagoth-Ur and any future threats.
So their godhood was a reluctant sacrifice, a necessary duty.
Exactly. A heavy burden taken up for the good of their people, according to their official doctrine.
And the third version, the outsider view.
That's usually the imperial or general scholarly account written from outside Morrowind. They tend to be more secular, I guess. They often downplay the divinity aspect.
So?
They might describe it primarily as a political or religious conflict between the Chimer factions and the Dwemer. Nuravar dies in the fighting, maybe from wounds sustained in the final assault. The tribunal, being his chief advisors, naturally step into the power vacuum, manage to harness the heart's power somehow, and then solidify their rule by declaring themselves god kings. It's often framed as a more mundane consolidation of power, with the godhood part maybe being exaggerated or metaphorical.
3 completely different takes on the same event. Murderous usurpers, reluctant saviors, or just canny politicians.
And each version has centuries of belief, tradition, and written records supporting it. It perfectly illustrates the problem or the richness, depending on your view of Tamrielic history. There often just isn't a single verifiable truth.
Incredible. Okay, let's push towards the end of this very long first era. What closes it out?
Well, after the Red Mountain incident, things settle for a while. But then in 1E 2703, Tamriel faces a huge external threat, a massive invasion from the continent of Akavir to the east.
The Seishi, the Snake Men.
That's them. Often described as serpentine vampires, though the details are hazy, they invade Tamriel in force.
And this prompts the humans to unite again.
Yes. The invasion galvanizes the various human kingdoms, which had probably fragmented after Alessia's initial empire. They rally behind a warlord named Remen Saradil, and, crucially, Remen is dragonborn.
Ah, the bloodline connection again.
It seems to be recognized even by the invaders. The story goes that when the Seishi leaders confronted Remen, they recognized his divine nature. Maybe they had prophecies about him. Instead of fighting, they hailed him as emperor and swore loyalty to him.
Really? They just switched sides.
Bizarre, isn't it? But that's the account. Remen incorporates the Seishi into his own armies and administration, founding the Second Empire of Man. He rules almost all of Tamriel except, notably, Morrowind, which remains under the Tribunal's control.
So the Second Empire begins, but the First Era ends.
How? With Remen's dynasty ending quite abruptly. In 1E 2920, the Emperor Rima III and his only heir, Prince Julik, are both assassinated.
By who?
The Morag Tom, the ancient Dunmer Assassins Guild based in Morrowind. But the suspicion, heavily implied in many sources, is that the assassination was orchestrated by Rimon's own Akaviri potentate, his chief minister, a Saisi, named Versaduce.
The potentate takes over.
He seizes the Ruby Throne, yes. With no Riemann heir left, Versaduce declares the end of the First Era and the beginning of the Second Era, with himself effectively in charge.
Ushering in Part 3, the Second Era. The Long Interregnum, 896 years.
An interregnum is the key word. It's defined by the absence of a legitimate dragonborn emperor on the throne.
So it starts with these Akaviri potentates ruling.
Yes, Versaduce and then later his son, Severian Chorak, they rule for about 430 years, and Versaduce was efficient. Brutally so, he wanted to consolidate power completely.
How did he do that?
In 2E 283, he declared universal martial law across the empire. Then, over the next few decades, he systematically waged war against and disbanded all local armies, the forces loyal to regional kings and nobles.
Leaving only the Imperial Legion.
Exactly, ensuring that only the central government controlled by him had any real military power. It centralized authority, but it had some huge downsides.
Like what?
Well, it bankrupted the empire, for one. But more importantly, by removing local militias and guards, it created a massive power vacuum outside the major cities. Suddenly, the countryside was overrun with bandits, monsters, local warlords. Chaos increased dramatically at the local level.
So central control but local anarchy. That sounds unstable.
Very. But paradoxically, this very chaos led to the creation of some of Tamriel's most lasting institutions, things born out of necessity.
How so?
Well, the potentate needed a way to keep some kind of order, essentially protecting trade routes, without giving power back to the nobles he'd just crushed. So his kinsman comes up with an idea.
Yeah.
The Sifim, the Fighters Guild. Basically, state-sanctioned mercenaries. Professionals for hire who could deal with local problems, but ultimately answered to a central guild structure, not local lords.
Ah, clever. A private army, almost.
In a sense. And around the same time, another major guild gets officially sanctioned, the Mages Guild.
Yeah.
It had been founded a bit earlier, in 2E 230, by Vanus Galarian.
What was his goal?
Galarian wanted to take magic out of the hands of secretive cults or isolated wizards and make magical knowledge and training more widely available. Democratize it, essentially.
So the Guilds Act of 2E321 formally recognizes both.
Yes, and because the official imperial structures were so weak or absent in many places, these guilds thrived. They stepped into the gap, providing services the state couldn't, becoming truly pan-Tamrielic organizations that lasted for centuries.
Necessity is the mother of invention, right? What happens to the potentates?
Their rule ends violently, too. In 2E 430, the last potentate, Severian Chorak, is assassinated. This time, it's attributed to the Dark Brotherhood, a shadowy assassins cult that seemed to split off from the Morag Tong.
And that's the end of the Second Empire.
Pretty much. His death shatters any remaining central authority. Tamriel plunges back into about 400 years of even worse chaos, constant warfare between petty kingdoms, provinces breaking away. It's a real dark age.
Until something even worse happens. The plane melt.
Ugh, yes. The mid-Second Era nightmare. It starts around 2E 579. A Reachman warlord named Varen Aquilarios actually conquers the imperial city and wants to become emperor. But he's not dragonborn.
So he needs legitimacy.
He tries to get it through an ancient ritual involving the Amulet of Kings. But he's betrayed by his chief advisor, the powerful necromancer Manimarco,
The king of worms himself.
who it turns out is secretly working for the Daedric prince Molag Bal. Manimarco twists the ritual, and the result is the Soul Burst, a massive explosion of arcane energy that rips reality, tearing a hole between Nirn and Oblivion.
Letting Molag Dal in.
Effectively, yes. Molag Bal, the Daedric prince of domination and enslavement, sees his chance. He initiates the plane meld, a terrifying attempt to literally pull Nirn into his realm of Cold Harbor, merging the two planes under his absolute control.
How does he try to do that?
Using huge magical devices called dark anchors. Massive chains literally drop from the sky, trying to hook into the land and drag it into oblivion. It's apocalyptic stuff.
And this happens while everyone is already fighting each other.
Exactly. It leads to the incredibly messy Three Banners War. You've got three major alliances fighting for the imperial throne, the Daggerfall Covenant in the northwest,
Bretons, Redguards, Orcs,
the First Aldmeri Dominion in the southwest,
Altmer, Bosmer, Khajiit,
and the Ebonheart Pact in the northeast.
Nords, Dunmer, Argonians. An unlikely bunch.
Very unlikely. And they're all fighting each other and trying to stop Molag Bal's invasion at the same time. Total chaos.
How does it end? Does Molag Bal win?
Thankfully, no. The plane meld is eventually stopped around 2E 582. The hero responsible is known only as the Vestige, a mysterious figure who was actually killed and had their souls stolen by Molag Bal, but somehow came back.
A soulless hero.
Seems so. The Vestige manages to navigate the Alliance War, gathers allies, and eventually invades Cold Harbor itself, with help from another Daedric prince, Meridia, who hates Molag Bal. They disrupt the plane meld and defeat Molag Bal's main forces.
But the interregnum, the lack of an emperor, continues.
For a while longer, yes, until the rise of arguably the single most important and most debated figure in Tamriel's history, Tiber Septim.
The man who ends the chaos and starts the Third Era.
The very same. He emerges as this incredibly effective warlord, unifying the fractured human kingdom starting around 2E 854. He is dragonborn.
But his origins, they're murky, right? This ties back to the unreliable narrator thing again.
Absolutely central to it. Imperial history deliberately obscures where he came from. Was he a Nord from Etmora named Talos? Was he a Briton general named Jelti Earlybeard? Was he both? Or was Tiber Septim a composite figure, maybe even an oversoul made up of several individuals, as some mystical theories suggest?
Why the confusion? Why not just say who he was?
Because the ambiguity was politically useful. It allowed him to be all things to all men. Nords could see him as the return of their ancient hero, Heart of Lorkhan. Bretons could claim him as one of their own making good. Imperials saw him as the restorer of the Elysian Covenant.
Creating a mythic founder that everyone could rally behind.
Precisely. It's a masterclass in creating an imperial founding myth. Pure propaganda genius in many ways.
So he conquers most of Tamriel, but hits a snag with the elves, the Aldmeri Dominion.
Yes, the Second Aldmeri Dominion, primarily based in Somerset and Valenwood, puts up fierce resistance. The war is long, bloody, costly. Tiber Septim realizes he needs an edge, something decisive.
And he gets it. From Morrowind. From Vivec.
He does. He makes a deal with Vivec, one of the living gods of the tribunal. The exact terms are debated, but the core of it seems to be. Morrowind gets to keep its autonomy, its religion, its traditions, basically remaining a vassal state rather than a fully integrated province.
And in return,
Vivec gives Tiber Septim the ultimate weapon, the Numidium, the brass god. The Dwemer superweapon they recovered after the Battle of Red Mountain.
whoa, they just had that lying around.
Apparently so, though maybe not fully functional until then. Septim's battle mage, Zurin Arctus, figures out how to power it, possibly using his own soul or the soul of another powerful figure.
And Septim uses it against the Dominion.
He unleashes it on the Somerset Isles. And the Numidium, it doesn't just fight battles, it breaks reality. It imposes its will on the timeline. It's said to have shattered the Dominion's defenses almost instantly, forcing their surrender through sheer metaphysical power.
A reality-working superweapon. That's
Yeah.
terrifying.
And incredibly effective. With the Dominion defeated, all of Tamriel is finally united under one ruler for the first time ever. So in 2E 896, Tiber Septim declares the end of the Second Era and the beginning of the Third Era, his era.
Okay, part 4. The Third Era, 3E1 to 3E433. The Age of the Septims, often called a Golden Age.
It starts that way, maybe, but honestly, looking back, it seems more like an age of slow, steady decline for imperial authority, despite having dragonborn emperors back on the throne.
What kinds of problems did they face?
Right off the bat, instability. The second emperor, Pelagius I, is assassinated. Later, you have the incredibly destructive War of the Red Diamond,
What was that about?
a massive civil war over the succession. Empress Kintyre II was overthrown by her cousin Uriel III, backed by his mother Potema, the infamous Wolf Queen of Solitude. It tore the empire apart for years and really damaged the legitimacy of the Septim line.
So cracks showing early on.
Definitely. And then later in the era, you get the imperial simulacrum, a period of, well, deception on an imperial scale.
What happened there? This is late Third Era, right? 3E389.
To 3E399, yeah. The imperial battle mage, Jagar Tharn, a powerful illusionist, managed to imprison the real emperor, Uriel Septim VII, in a pocket dimension of oblivion.
And Thorn took his place.
Using powerful illusion magic, powered by the Staff of Chaos artifact, he ruled as the emperor for 10 years, sowing discord and conflict between the provinces like the 5-year war between Valenwood and elsewhere, probably to keep everyone weak and distracted.
How's he stopped?
A mysterious hero, known only as the Eternal Champion, was guided by the spirit of Uriel VII's murdered apprentice. The champion had to travel all over Tamriel, reassembling the 8 pieces of the Staff of Chaos which Tharn had scattered. Once reforged, the staff's power was enough to destroy Tharn and free the real emperor.
Wow, 10 years of rule by an imposter. That must have shaken faith in the Empire.
Immensely. And just when things seemed to settle down after Uriel VII's return, something even weirder happens. The warp in the west.
Ah, the Dragon Break.
Yeah.
3E417. This sounds like it really messes with history.
It fundamentally breaks it, for a time. The setup is complex, involving the Numidium again. Or rather, its power source, the Mantella, which contained the soul used to power it.
Okay.
This Mantella ends up back in the Iliac Bay region, between High Rock and Hammerfell, and multiple factions of the local kingdoms like Daggerfall and Werest, the Orcs trying to establish Orsinium, the King of Worms, Metamarco, and an agent of the Emperor all get their hands on it or activate it somehow, simultaneously.
Simultaneously.
How's the paradox? The sheer metaphysical stress of this artifact being activated by multiple competing powers at once overloaded reality. It caused a dragon break, meaning Akatosh, the dragon god of time, was metaphorically broken or wounded. Linear time simply ceased to function in that region for about 2 or 3 days. Everything happened at once.
What did happen during those days, if time wasn't working?
That's the crazy part. All the mutually exclusive outcomes happened. Daggerfall defeated its enemies in consolidated power, and Werest defeated its enemies in consolidated power, and the Orcs successfully carved out their kingdom of Orsinium. And the necromancer Metamarco achieved his long-sought goal of godhood, becoming the necromancer's moon, Revenant, that now orbits Arche. And another entity called the Underking finally found peace.
Wait, all those things happened, even though they contradict each other?
Yes, when time snapped back into place, reality sort of squished itself together to make all those contradictory outcomes true facts. The political map of the Iliac Bay was instantly redrawn from dozens of petty kingdoms into just 4 major powers. A new god was in the sky.
How did the Empire even record that?
Officially, they called it the Miracle of Peace, a convenient way to gloss over the fact that time itself broke and rewrote reality in a way nobody fully understood. That's maybe the most extreme example of history being mutable.
Unbelievable. Okay. What else defines the late Third Era? Morrowind comes back into focus, right?
Yes, big time. In 3E427, things start going wrong in Morrowind again. Dagoth-Ur, the supposed traitor from the Battle of Red Mountain, somehow reawakens under Red Mountain.
Drawing power from the Heart of Lorkhan again.
Exactly. And he starts spreading the horrific corpus disease, creating monsters, and apparently trying to build his own new medium called a Kulakan. The Tribunal, whose power also came from the Heart, find their own divinity waning. They can't stop him.
So the Emperor steps in, Uriel Septim VII again.
He does, acting on prophecy. He identifies a specific prisoner in the imperial jails, someone who matches the prophecies of the reincarnation of Indoril Nerevar.
And sends this prisoner to Morrowind.
Correct. This Nerevarine has to navigate Dunmer politics, gain the trust of the Ashlanders and the Great Houses, fulfill ancient trials.
And eventually confront Dagoth-Ur.
Yes. The Nerevarine finally makes it to the Heart Chamber, uses Kagrenac's tools Sunder and Keening to destroy the enchantments on the Heart of Lorkhan, effectively severing its connection to Nirn and destroying Dagoth-Ur.
But destroying the heart, That also affects the tribunal, doesn't it?
Critically, by destroying the heart, the Nerevarine also cuts off Almalexia, Sothosil, and Vivek from their source of divine power. They become mortal again. Their 3,000-year reign as living gods comes to an end, a monumental shift in Morrowind's history.
Wow. End of an era for them. And then just 6 years later, the end of the era for everyone.
3E 433, the Oblivion Crisis. It starts with coordinated assassinations. A cult known as the Mythic Dawn, worshipping Marunas Dagon, the Daedric Prince of Destruction.
They kill the Emperor.
Uriel Septim VII, yes. And, crucially, all of his known heirs, every single one.
Breaking the covenant.
Exactly. With no dragonborn emperor to wear the Amulet of Kings, the dragon fires go out. The ancient pact with Akatosh is broken. The barriers between Nirn and Oblivion weaken catastrophically.
And Dagon invades.
Immediately, hundreds of Oblivion gates open up all across Tamriel, pouring out Daedra. It's a full-scale invasion aimed at destroying the Empire and claiming Nirn for Dagon. Cities are besieged, armies overwhelmed. It's chaos.
But there's a hero, the Shiro of Kavach.
Yes, another anonymous hero emerges from prison, actually witnessing the Emperor's assassination. They help the last surviving members of the Blades find Uriel's illegitimate son, a priest living in Kavach named Martin Septim.
Martin Septim, the last dragonborn.
The last of the Septim bloodline. The hero of Kavach escorts Martin, helps close numerous Oblivion gates, retrieves powerful artifacts, all leading to a final confrontation.
In the imperial city itself.
Yes. Marunas Dagon manages to manifest his true colossal form right in the heart of the city, beginning to destroy it. He's unstoppable by conventional means.
To Martin.
Martin realizes there's only one way. He has the Amulet of Kings. He orders the hero of Kavach and the guards to get him to the Temple of the One. Inside, he shatters the amulet.
Shatters it, but doesn't that doom them?
It unleashes all the divine power stored within it over the millennia. He merges his own soul, his dragon blood essence, with the spirit of Akatosh himself, who resides within the amulet.
He becomes an avatar.
A giant fiery dragon avatar of Akatosh. In this form, he battles Marunas Dagon directly and manages to banish the Daedric Prince back to Oblivion forever.
But the cost.
The cost is everything. Martin's mortal form is consumed. The avatar turns to stone, a permanent monument in the ruined temple. The Septim bloodline is extinguished. The Amulet of Kings is destroyed. The covenant is permanently broken.
He saved the world, but ended the Third Era.
Absolutely. A definitive, fiery, sacrificial end. Which leads us into Part 5, the Fourth Era. 4E1 to, well, now, the Age of Strife.
And it starts badly, doesn't it, with the Empire reeling?
Terribly. The High Chancellor, Okato, a skilled Altmer mage who served Uriel VII, tries to hold things together as potentate. But he's assassinated in 4E10, likely by Thalmor agents.
Thalmor. We haven't heard much about them yet.
They become very important very quickly. But Okato's death plunges the Empire into the storm-crowned interregnum. Years of chaos, rival claimants to the throne, and provinces start breaking away immediately.
Black Marsh and elsewhere secede.
Right away, they see the Empire is powerless.
And then Morrowind suffers. Again, the Red Year.
4E5. This ties back to the Neverines' actions. Remember, the tribunal lost their power. Vivek himself had vanished sometime after. He was apparently the one using his divine energy to keep a small moon called Bardao, or the Ministry of Truth, hovering above Vivek City.
He was using it as a prison or a threat.
Both, maybe. But with others' power sustaining it, it finally fell. It crashed directly into Vivek City.
Obliterating it.
Completely.
Yeah.
And the impact triggered a massive, catastrophic eruption of Red Mountain, far worse than previous ones. It devastated most of Vardenfell and mainland Morrowind. Ash storms, lava flows.
Yeah.
A massive disaster.
And the Argonians take advantage.
Oh, yes. The Argonians of Black Marsh, now led by the fiercely nationalistic Angelo government, saw their chance for revenge after millennia being enslaved by the Dunmer. They launched a full-scale invasion of southern Morrowind, sacking major cities like Mournhold. This became known as the Accession War.
Forcing the Dunmer to flee.
A huge exodus. Dunmer refugees scattered across Tamriel, especially to places like Skyrim and Solstheim. Morrowind was fundamentally broken.
While all this is happening, you mentioned the Thalmor rise in Somerset.
Yes, they are this radical, ultra-nationalist Altmer faction. They seize power in the Somerset Isles, renaming it Alinor, and they are masters of propaganda.
How so?
They actually claim they were responsible for ending the Oblivion Crisis, using their powerful magic. With the Empire in chaos and the Crystal Tower destroyed during the crisis, many Altmer believed them, seeing them as saviors. They formed the Third Aldmeri Dominion.
And they expand their influence.
They do. They manage to bring Valenwood back into the fold, and they gain Elswere's allegiance through another clever, possibly deceptive move.
The Void Knights.
Exactly. From 4E 98 to 100, the two moons of Nirn, Masser, and Secunda just vanished from the sky. This was terrifying, especially for the Khajiit, whose entire physiology and culture are tied to the moons.
And the Thelmar claimed they brought them back.
They did. Whether they actually did anything or just took credit when the moons naturally reappeared is unknown. But the Khajiit believed them, and Elsewhere joined the Dominion.
So the Dominion is getting stronger, the Empire is weak, leading to war.
The Great War. In 4E-171, the Thalmor delivered an ultimatum to the Emperor Titus Medi, demanding tribute, disbanding the Blades, and crucially, outlawing the worship of Tylos.
Tiber Septim himself, why outlaw his worship?
Because the Thalmor and many elves fundamentally reject the idea that a human could achieve divinity and ascend to godhood alongside the Aedra. Talos represents the ascendancy of man, which they despise. Banning his worship strikes at the heart of human imperial identity.
The Emperor refused.
He did, and the Dominion invaded. It was a brutal war, lasting 4 years. The Thalmor armies, seemingly unstoppable, pushed deep into Cyrodiil and Hammerfell. They even sacked the imperial city itself, committing terrible atrocities.
But the Empire fights back.
Emperor Titus Mede II, who succeeded his father, manages a daring counterattack. He gathers his forces, lures the main Dominion army in Cyrodiil into a trap, and retakes the imperial city in the incredibly bloody Battle of the Red Ring. A major victory.
But not enough to win the war.
The empire was exhausted. Its legions were shattered, its treasury empty. Mede II felt he had no choice but to negotiate. In 4E-175, he signed the White Gold Concordat.
The peace treaty, what were the terms?
Humiliating for the empire. Large parts of southern Hammerfell were ceded to the Dominion. The Blades were officially disbanded, and most controversially, the treaty included the Talos ban. The worship of Tiber Septim became illegal throughout the empire.
How did the provinces react to that?
Hammerfell was furious. They completely rejected the treaty, feeling betrayed by the emperor for giving away their land. They continued fighting the Dominion alone.
And they won.
Eventually, yes. After several more years of bitter fighting, they forced the Aldmeri Dominion forces out of Hammerfell, securing their own independence from the empire in the process.
So the Empire is diminished, Hammerfell is independent, and the Talos ban is in place. This sounds like the setup for Skyrim's problems.
Directly. The Talos ban created deep resentment, especially among the Nords in Skyrim, who consider Talos not just a god, but their god, their greatest hero. This simmering anger is what allows Ulfric Stormcloak to gain support.
When he kills the High King.
Exactly. In 4E-201, Ulfric challenges High King Torrig to a duel and kills him, using the Thuum, which many saw as dishonorable. This act ignites the Skyrim Civil War. Ulfric's Stormcloaks, who want independence and the freedom to worship Talos, versus the Imperial Legion, trying to hold the province and to hold the Concordat.
And right in the middle of this political mess.
The dragons return. Alduin the World Eater, the one cast forward in time during the Merethic Era, reappears, exactly as ancient prophecies foretold. The end of the world seems imminent.
But then, the last Dragonborn emerges.
Dovahkiin, another figure of uncertain origin, often starting as a prisoner, caught up in the Civil War. This individual discovers they have the soul of a dragon, the ability to absorb dragon souls and learn the Thuum rapidly.
And they defeat Alduin.
After many trials, learning ancient shouts, even traveling to the Nordic afterlife of Sovgard itself, the last Dragonborn confronts and ultimately defeats Alduin, averting the apocalypse.
Which brings us pretty much up to the present day and the historical records we have. A world still fractured, still dealing with the fallout of the Great War, the Civil War, and the return of ancient threats.
Exactly. A continuous cycle of conflict, often rooted in those very first myths and schisms we discussed.
So to wrap this all up, let's revisit that core theme, the mutability of history. You wanted to discuss one final, really provocative example.
Yes, the one that maybe challenges our assumptions the most.
Yeah.
The infamous Cyrodiil jungle retcon.
Right, the changing landscape of the imperial province itself. What's the basic discrepancy?
It's geographical, and it's documented in official imperial texts. The very first pocket guide to the empire, published under Tiber Septim's authority in the late Second Era, it explicitly describes Cyrodiil, the Heartland, as a land of endless jungle, rainforests, Nibonese river basins, teeming with subtropical life.
But that's not what we see later, or even earlier.
That's the problem. By the time of the Oblivion Crisis in the late Third Era and certainly into the Fourth, Cyrodiil is clearly depicted as a temperate land, rolling hills, deciduous forests, closer to a European climate. And here's the kicker. Chronicles from the early Second Era, before Tiber Septim, also seem to describe the temperate landscape we see later.
So the jungle description appears only in texts from Tiber Septim's time. It's sandwiched between accounts of a temperate climate. How is that possible?
It's a historical paradox, and scholars have wrestled with it, coming up with a few main theories.
What's the simplest explanation?
The mundane one, transcription error. A scholar named Phrastus of Elenhir argued it was just a mistake. Maybe endless jungle was a miscopying of something like extensive uplands, or maybe a poetic exaggeration that got taken literally.
Just bad record keeping.
That's the gist. It neatly dismisses the mystery, but a lot of people find it unsatisfying. Would Tiber Septim's highly effective propaganda machine really let such a massive error about the Heartland persist in its official guide?
Seems unlikely. Okay, what's theory number 2? More magical.
More metaphysical, yeah. It ties into the towers, like the white gold tower we mentioned. The idea is that these towers don't just anchor reality, they subtly shape it according to the desires or nature of their controllers.
So the elves liked jungle, the men liked forests.
Kind of. The Aelides, the original elven rulers, perhaps preferred or their magic encouraged a jungle environment. When men, predominantly Nords and Needs with northern origins, conquered the tower under Alessia and later Remen, the tower's influence slowly, over millennia, reshaped the climate to match their more temperate human preferences.
So the change happened, but gradually influenced by the tower's magic.
That's the theory. It allows for change without requiring a sudden rewrite of history.
But there's a third theory, the really wild one.
The most dramatic one, yeah. The ascendance of Tylos theory. This ties directly into Tiber Septim, achieving godhood, and potentially wielding a reality-altering power known as CHIM.
CHIM. What's that?
It's complex, a state of understanding the nature of reality as dream, specifically the dream of the Godhead, but maintaining your individuality within it, allowing you to reshape the dream, like lucid dreaming on a cosmic scale. Vivek supposedly achieved it too.
And this theory says Talos used CHIM to change Cyrodiil.
Exactly. The story goes that Tiber Septim, or perhaps Talos upon ascending, retroactively changed Cyrodiil's climate. Why? Because his legions, mostly Nords, hated the jungle during his campaigns to conquer it. So he simply made it so Cyrodiil had always been temperate to match the preferences of men.
He didn't just change the present, he rewrote the past.
That's the core of the CHIM theory. He erased the jungle timeline. But somehow, contradictory evidence, like that first edition pocket guide describing the jungle, persists, like glitches in the matrix, echoes of a reality that was unmade.
Ghosts in the machine, or the timeline.
Precisely. And the fact that these theories exist, that something as fundamental as the climate of the imperial heartland can be subject to transcription errors, slow magical change, or retroactive divine editing, it just proves the point.
That Tamrielic history is fundamentally unstable.
It's not just a record, it's a narrative. One that's constantly being debated by scholars in dusty libraries, rewritten by emperors with armies, and maybe even unmade and remade by gods playing with reality.
What a mind-bending journey. We went from Anu and Padme, the birth of the Aedra and Daedra, the betrayal of Lorkhan, through the rise and fall of empires, the mystery of the vanished Dwemer, the conflicting accounts of Red Mountain, the timeline chaos of the Dragon Break.
The rise and fall of the tribunal gods, the sacrifice of Martin Septim ending an era.
And the ongoing conflicts of the Fourth Era, driven by the Thalmor, the Talos Ban, the Skyrim Civil War, all echoing those ancient men versus mer divisions. It all circles back, doesn't it?
It really does. The past is never truly past in Tamriel. It's actively shaping the present, sometimes literally reappearing.
So the final thought then, the provocative question to leave everyone with.
If history can be demonstrably rewritten, maybe even retroactively, by someone powerful enough like Tiber Septim with Cyrodiil, and if artifacts from a previous erased timeline can still linger,
like the pocket guide,
then how many other things we've talked about today, things we accept as history, might actually be the result of some other divine edit? Some god's whim, some hero's wish? Could the Dwemer's vanishing have been different originally? Could the tribunal's story have been altered? What does it really mean for mortals living in that world if their past, their reality isn't fixed? It can be changed without them even knowing.
A chilling thought to end on. It makes you question